Setting up virtual lab environment. So it's important that you practice what you learn here while the course goes on. For that reason, you should build your own lab. So you may think of the lab that it might contain physical dedicated servers or bare-bone hosts or other network equipment. I always think of somebody in a white lab coat and gray spiky hair and test tubes and boiling things. But no, we're going to be able to do everything in this course using the virtual environment, which is precisely what computers were made for. Now, don't worry, I'm going to help you build this lab step by step, but it will be your lab. And hold on, before you get out your calculator, all these lab environments are going to cost you nothing, just your time and patience. So let's first have a look at the requirements. When you prepare for your lab, you should make sure that your setup will meet the system requirements. Because we're going to get into using virtual machines as well as some other processor consumer tools, I highly recommend that your system is capable of handling at least 2 virtual machines simultaneously. Now, for storage. I'm not going to throw out some random numbers about the size of available hard drive space, but you really will need some. Now, if you don't have enough, you're probably going to face some problems. Now, what about memory? You don't want to have any insufficient memory fail, so I strongly advise using at least 16 gigabytes of RAM. Now, for your processor, I think if you try this course, it means to me that you probably have a processor that will support virtualization. Now, you should activate it from BIOS if this is the first time for you using a virtual machine. Now, what about for a hypervisor? Well, VMware Player, VMware Workstation, or VirtualBox, all of them are good options to build the lab on. However, what you're going to see me do is use VMware Workstation Player because some intentionally vulnerable virtual machines work only on VMware Workstation Player. I'm just saying. And then finally, internet access. Of course, you're going to need the internet, but only when you're setting up the lab. Otherwise, I don't think you're going to need it, but it's going to be good to be able to search for extra information, so I'll leave that up to you. Now, again, before diving into the building process, I do want to show you the overview of what our lab is going to look like, and the basic idea here is to create a server that has some vulnerable web applications. Therefore, we can attack these applications from Kali Linux, which will be our attacking machine. Also, of course, we're going to need a web server to host the vulnerable web applications. So when you complete the lab with me, you will have a Kali Linux virtual machine with internet access. So when you complete the lab, you will have a Linux server as well. Now, in my case, the IP address of Kali will be 192.168.204.128. And a vulnerable server will have the address of 192.168.204.130. So these addresses may be different in your environment, but I trust you know IP addresses and subnets to know the difference. Then, of course, these machines must be able to communicate with each other. So generally, a real-life network system contains hosts, servers, routers, switches, firewalls, and, well, sometimes many other components. So you're going to need to divide the network, do some cabling, and configure the components as well. However, that's not all. And I might even go so far as to say that may be the very least. So in other words, you're still going to need to do more, both with the physical components as well as software. But what should you do when you need to try to simulate a network? Now, as an individual, you can, of course, pay for all the network components and equipment, but I don't think that's going to work here. So, thanks to virtualization technology, that's going to help us build our own network system. So, I think virtualization is a great place to start. Although I'll tell you this, that containerization technology that's coming up in the field these days, But you're going to want to start by learning virtualization. VMware Workstation Player. So with virtualization software, you can create a fully functional real-life network inside your host computer. Virtualization software is very powerful, and they also have a rich set of features that compare to dual booting machines. They mostly support cloning a virtual machine, and you can duplicate a VM as well. And again, most of them provide taking snapshots of the VM so that you can revert back to a clean state just in case you mess up your machine. So this feature, Revert Back, is terrific, and you'll certainly understand what I mean if you can't visualize it yourself when we practice. Now, another great feature is the ability to be able to change the size of the virtual disk, the RAM, number of processors, and so on. Now, naturally, you're also going to find the networking options in virtualization software are impressive. Generally, they have a different perspective for networking. Host-only, NAT, and bridged are only some of the options. So at the very beginning, that might confuse you, but don't worry, because in the demo section, I'm going to show you how you can choose and configure these options. Now, you're also going to be allowed to enable some additional features, such as copying and pasting text between the host and the virtual machine, as well as improved graphic performance and synchronization of the clock. Now, of course, along with these features, there are some drawbacks when you need to run a processor-intensive task, such as cracking passwords. What? We get to crack passwords? Remember, this is ethical hacking. But we don't need to use that much processing power in the lab itself. So anyway, in this course, you can use VMware Workstation Player as a desktop virtualization application. So it is a virtualization software package for 64-bit computers running Microsoft Windows or Linux. It's available for free for personal use, and it's supplied by VMware Inc. Now, VMware Player can run existing virtual machines as well as create its own. It uses the same virtualization core as VMware Workstation. So VMware Inc. does not formally support the player, but there is an active community website for discussing and resolving issues. Now, I think that its power lies in the fact that it's deceptively simple to use. But I don't have the intention to tell you everything about it. You really should familiarize yourself with all the features that certainly I tell you about virtualization software and anything else that you've either gathered before or can research on your own. But for now and for this course, let's go ahead and install it, and then we can have a quick look at the tool. So open up your favorite browser and type VMware Workstation Player in the search box. And click the first link to go to the download page. And you can see the latest version here is version 15. So we're going to use this version. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the download options for the major host systems. Click on the option which is suitable for you. So, of course, what I mean by the host is what your main operating system installed is on your computer. Now, here I'm using Windows 10 as my host, so I'm going to download the Windows option. But you can instead download for Linux if you are indeed using the Linux operating system. So, okay, let's save the file, and the download has started. Now, go to your Downloads folder. And let me just close the browser and double-click on the exe file, and the installation will start in a few seconds. Now, the installation process, of course, is very easy. Just click Next. Okay, read the license, please, as you always do, I'm sure. Then accept the license agreement. Click Next again. And I don't want to install this feature, so I'm going to leave it unchecked and click Next. Good. Now also I'm going to uncheck these fields and click Next again. Next. And now I can finally click Install. Now it's not going to take that much time to install, just a few seconds. And there it is, the installation has finished. Now you can also provide a license if you have one, but we're not going to need a license. We're just going to use it for personal use only, and click Finish. All right, so now you're done. And I'm going to close this window. And then here on my desktop, there's a shortcut for the Workstation Player. So I'm just going to open Workstation Player by double-clicking on it. And like I said earlier, the first option is good for us. Click Continue. Alrighty then, so this is the Workstation Player window. There it is, in all its glory. That's what it looks like. Very simple, yet very powerful. So at this point, I'll offer congratulations because you have installed VMware Workstation Player. I want you to play around, be familiar with some of the menus before you start hacking, okay? So right now, let's install some of the other components for your lab. VirtualBox is a freely available open source software solution, runs on Windows, Linux, Macintosh, and Solaris hosts, and supports many guest operating systems. So VirtualBox is deceptively simple, but it's also very powerful. So let's go ahead and install it, give it a quick look. Hey there, so I want to make a particular hands-on demonstration in Windows for two particular reasons. One, I'd like to show you that the host is not critically important while preparing the lab. And secondly, I'd like the students using Windows as a host system to feel comfortable at the beginning of the course, because we're going to be using a Mac as a host system in general for the rest of the course. So simply by using your favorite web browser, type VirtualBox into the address bar. You will see the official site of VirtualBox is the first row of the results page. So it's virtualbox.org is the official site. So click on it. And on the left pane, there's the download menu item. So let's click it to see the download options. All right, so this is the latest edition when I was preparing the course. Now, there's a couple of options for the major hosts. So, by the way, what I mean about the host is that your main operating system installed on your computer. So click on the option, whichever is suitable for you. Right now, I'll use a Windows 10 machine as the host. So I'm going to download for Windows hosts. And while downloading VirtualBox, just scroll your mouse down a little bit and you can see that there's an extension pack to install as well. The extension pack helps your installation support different things like USB 2 and 3 devices. It's not an obligation, but it may help you to manage your installation easily. Now click on the link, All Supported Platforms. Wait a little bit. Might not take too much time. All of it has been downloaded. Go to my Downloads folder. Double-click on the X file. Click Next, Next, Next. And now it will install some virtual network adapters at this phase. So click Yes and Install. Now it's going to be installing for a while. And there it is finished. I don't want you to start now, so let's uncheck the box and click Finish. See, now's the time for installing an extension. After installation of VirtualBox, the icon has changed. You see that? So double-click on it and wait for a bit. Right, so now this screen comes up. Click Install. So go ahead and scroll down until the end, and you'll see that I agree button. It's enabled. So click on it if you agree, and, well, you should agree in order to use VirtualBox. So wait a second, Okay, so now you're done. Congratulations, you've installed VirtualBox. So please have a look and be familiar with the menus by yourself before you start. Virtualbox.org is the official site. And on the left pane, there's the Download menu item. So in the Downloads page, we have platform packages here. Click on OS X hosts as a link for Mac devices. Now select the appropriate location for the installation package and click Save to start the download. When the download's finished, double-click on the installation package file, which has the .dmg at the end. Okay, so here you do what the instructions tell you. Double-click on the VirtualBox.package icon, click Continue, continue again, and Install. And then here I just enter the local admin password and click the Install Software button. Now, go to the Applications menu and click the VirtualBox icon to start your virtualization environment. Congratulations, you've installed VirtualBox. Now I want to show you how to install Kali from the ISO file. The first step is the same, downloading the installation file. Here, the ISO file. Open the browser and simply Google the words Kali and download. The first website is the official site of Kali, so click on it. This is the download page of Kali, and these are the ISO files. You can use them to install Kali as a main host or as a virtual machine in any virtualization platform. Now there are 64-bit and 32-bit versions, as well as new image styles of Kali Linux, Installer, Live, and Net Installer. At the bottom of the Kali image files table, there are ready-to-use, well, almost ready-to-use Kali virtual machines. So if you do want to use Kali as a virtual machine, you can use them instead of installing ISO files from scratch. So I'd like to download and install the ISO file of the 64-bit installer image of Kali. So I'll just click on this link to download the ISO file via the protocol that we affectionately know as HTTP. And now we can save the file and have a look at that. So what do you think the second step of installing Kali from the ISO file is? That's right, installation. The ISO file for Light Kali has been downloaded and it's in the Downloads folder. Now I go to VMware Fusion Virtual Machine Library. From the upper left corner, click the Add button and select New. We're on the installation method selection window. So the big option, which is selected by default, is our option, install from disk or image. Now I can click Continue to move on. So now is the time to select the ISO file. We can't just drop the file if we drag it from over here. Here's the file browser. Select the ISO file, drag and drop it in the installation wizard, and click Continue. In the next step, we have to choose the operating system of the VM. Now we know that Kali is a Debian-based Linux distro, and we downloaded the 64-bit version, so choose Linux, then the 64-bit version of the latest Debian, and once again click Continue. You can select the firmware type of a virtual machine. Legacy BIOS is a standard BIOS firmware. UEFI is an interface between the operating system and the platform firmware. So if you do select UEFI, you have the option of enabling UEFI Secure Boot. And of course, that secures the boot process. So now here I'm going to choose the Legacy BIOS option. So now we're on the last step of installation, and there's a summary here. The default values are 2 gigabytes of RAM, networking, etc. So when I click the Finish button, it asks for the location and the name of the VM file. I'm okay with the default. It's better to collect VMs in the same location, in my opinion. That way I stay organized, and I recommend you do too. And click Save. Now the VM boots for the very first time. In the boot menu, choose one of the install or graphical install options. I'll show you what the graphical install looks like now. As you see, it's a typical operating system installation. We need to configure the OS now. So select the language, location, and keyboard configuration. And now network configuration has been completed successfully. So I'll set the host name to Kali, and let's give it a domain name. I'll just choose the same name and continue. I'll set the username and password for the new user. Because Kali will not use a root account by default when it's started. Don't need any partitions. We're only installing Kali Lite as a virtual machine, so it can use the entire disk reserved for itself. Continue. Keep going with the default options for disk partitioning. Yes, write the changes to disks. Now the system is being installed. And just like before, it may take several minutes. So here Kali asks for the HTTP proxy information, but we're not going to need it now, so we can just leave it blank and continue. And in this section, you can choose the desktop environment that you want to use. Kali is no longer offering separate images for every desktop environment. There's just a single image for all of them. And it can be chosen during installation. So I will continue with the default option, XFCE. It's asking to install the grep bootloader to the master boot record. Now, this is more meaningful when you install an operating system as a second one on the host. We're just installing a virtual machine, so it's the only operating system for it. So, yes, install the grub bootloader to the master boot record. We have only one partition to install, grub, so I select that and continue. And installation is complete. So it's time to boot into our new system. Continue. We are finally at the login screen. Log in with username and password that you've set. Welcome to 64-bit Kali installed by the ISO file. So I want to turn it off for now. Now let's go to the folder that we chose for installation. Order by date modified, and here is the Kali Lite VM file. So now is the final step. Run the VM and fix any problems. So we installed the Kali Linux 64-bit installer image VM in the previous lecture. Now let's boot it and just make sure everything's okay. I know it will be, don't you? Okay, so we'll log in with the username and password that you set during the installation. And welcome back. All right, so let's take a quick look at the menu of the default XFCE desktop environment. And it is here in the upper left-hand corner, and these are the default tools of Kali. So first of all, let's open up a terminal screen and switch the user to the root account. And then this way we don't have to write the sudo command every time. And look at the IP address assigned by the VM. So let's ping a remote system. For example, a Google DNS 8.8.8.8 to check the internet connection. We receive the packets, no packet loss, and we have internet connection now. So just to double check, I open the web browser and visit any website on the internet. And it's okay now. If you are having problems with an internet connection, just check the solutions mentioned, Kali from VMware image, step 3, and that should help you fix the problem. Now, what about the local area network? Can the Kali 64-bit VM see the other systems in the same network? So I'll ping the Kali VMware machine, the IP 222. And here are the packets, so everything's okay. And that means we're ready to hack. Again, to double check, I'll go to the Kali VMware machine and ping the Kali 64-bit. Now, what was the IP of the Kali 64-bit machine? Here, it's 133. Okay, so now I'll just go to the Kali VMware machine and ping 133. And sure enough, everything is okay. I love it when everybody talks to each other error-free. So, Kali Linux is a Debian-based Linux distribution aimed at advanced penetration testing and security auditing. Kali contains several hundred tools which are geared towards various information security tasks, such as penetration testing, security research, computer forensics, and reverse engineering. Kali Linux is developed, funded, and maintained by Offensive Security, a leading information security training company. Now, we're going to use Kali as the attacker system. However, if you don't want to use Kali for whatever reason, you can download the tools that we use and install them to your host machine. So let's download it and install it as a virtual machine on our host system. So I'm going to prepare the Kali VM directly from the VirtualBox image first. The first step is to download the VM files. Open the browser and simply Google the words Kali and download. The first website is the official site of Kali, so click on it. This is the download page of Kali. These are the ISO files. You can use them to install Kali as the main host or as a virtual machine in any virtualization platform. Now, these are the images that you can use to install. With the latest release, Kali Linux announced that the images have been restructured and simplified. So from now on, Kali Linux has new image styles: installer image, a live image, and a network installer image. Installer image is recommended for users who want to use Kali Linux on their system. No network connection is required. You can choose desktop environments such as XFCE, KDE, GNOME, and any other tools that you want to install during your installation. Now, the second one is a live image. So it's used to run Kali without installing it. And the last one is a network install image. The smallest image, of course, to download, containing only enough to install the base system that requires a network connection to install selected applications. At the bottom of the Kali image files table, there are ready-to-use, well, almost ready-to-use Kali virtual machines So if you're going to use Kali as a virtual machine, you can use them instead of installing ISO files from scratch. I'm just going to use one of these images now, so I'll click on this link. So now we're in the Virtual Images page. Scroll down a bit, and here are the images. Click this link under the Kali Linux VirtualBox tab to download the OVA file. And the download has been completed. So here you can just simply run the OVA file to run the VM. So the second step is to install Kali. Well, since we'll use the OVA file, it'd be better to say import for this step. And the download's finished. It's under the download folder. Now I'll open a VirtualBox interface, choose import, and choose the OVA file under the download folder and click continue. So as you can see, there are the suggested settings of VirtualBox for the imported virtual machine. RAM is 2 gigs by default. Now just click Import and agree to the license agreement in order to continue. And it starts to import. That may take a couple of minutes. So I want to look at the size of the empty space on my host. df command simply displays the free disk space, and -8 parameter makes the result human readable. Now I have 140 gigabytes of free space, and that should be plenty for this installation. Installation's finished, and this is the summary of the VM. RAM is 2 gigabytes by default, and if you have enough RAM on your host system, I suggest you increase it. Networking is NAT at just as I want. Now just click on the Start button. Okay, the virtual machine could not be started. So I wonder about the details of this error, don't you? Okay then, so to fix this problem, we'll need to install the Oracle VM VirtualBox extension pack. So I'll copy this part, and I'll just search on the web. So now let's look at the official site of VirtualBox. We can download it under the title of Oracle VM VirtualBox extension pack. So we'll just click on this link and save the file. And it quickly downloads. So let's open the file and click Install. And again, I'll accept the virtual license agreement. And finally, enter the password to complete the installation. And now it's been installed successfully. So now I'd like to go to the Preferences and double check the extension packages. And everything is okay. Good. So now we can start again. Okay, so our Kali is booting for the first time. Click Switch for the full screen mode. And here we are at the login screen. Now, in addition to the changes that I mentioned in the previous lecture, there is another important change in this Kali 2020.2 release. The default user account is now a standard unprivileged user. Kali is no longer using the super user account root by default, right? So the new default credentials are Kali and Kali. And welcome to Kali 2020.2. Now, normally the screen resolution automatically fits your particular screen, but if you have any resolution problems like I appear to be having, you can change the scale for your screen. So first, I'll just open up the display settings, and I can choose the resolution value. to be 1920 by 1200 and click the Apply button. Now go to Preferences, and under the Display tab, you can change the scale factor. So I'll set this value to be 190% of my screen, and you can change it to whatever you want and just try different values for your screen. All right, so I'll click OK. Now let's look at the changes. Yeah, that's pretty good. So let's open a terminal screen and check the network connection. When I run the ifconfig command with standard user privileges, I will get an error because the ifconfig command is under the sbin folder and requires root privileges. So why don't we have a look inside that sbin folder? As you can see, I can run the cd, pwd, and ls commands without sudo. These commands do not require root privileges. However, the commands that are under the sbin folder must be run with sudo. Ifconfig is here, and let's run this command with sudo. And it's okay now. Of course, there is a more practical solution. We can always switch the user to root so that we don't have to write sudo for every command that requires root privileges. So let's run sudo su. Okay, so I'm root now, and I'll double check that with the whoami command. Well, now I can run any command which requires super user privileges without sudo. And this is my IP address. If ifconfig didn't obtain an IP address, that means that you have a problem with your network configuration. It's not a problem. Problems do occur, and I certainly will give you some solutions to fix any possible network problems in the next lecture. So now we're on the last step. Fix the problems and run Kali. Now, in this lecture, I will assume that you do have trouble with network connections, and I'm going to give you some solutions so that you can fix the problem. Now, hopefully you're not facing such a problem, so if you don't have a network situation, please, you don't have to apply any of these solutions in this lesson, but it's good to have you on the ride, and you can always sharpen your troubleshooting skills. So first off, let's reboot the machine to understand whether the problem is an exception for the initial run or not. So I shut down the virtual machine because I want to look at the settings of it. Now select Kali and click the Settings button and click the System tab. I want to make the RAM 3 gigabytes. So now I can click the Start button to boot it again. Username and password are both Kali. Okay, we are in again. So let's check the network connection by clicking the network icon at the upper right-hand corner. So I think there's a problem on the DHCP of the VMware. Well, anyway, we can live without DHCP as well. So I'm looking at the wired network. Don't be confused, even though you share the wireless connection of your host machine, it's simulated as a wired network in the VM. So let's open a terminal screen and look at the networking service if it's running. Write Service Networking and press Tab twice to see the available commands of the service. Networking service does not have status command, so I'll assume that it's not started and try to start it. And if you are still not connected at this point, let's go to Network Settings. You can go to Network Settings via Advanced Network Settings under the menu. Or you can right-click on the network icon in the upper right corner and select Edit Connections. Now click the wheel icon under the Wire tab, okay? Okay, I go to the IPv4 tab to set the IP manually. Click the manual option. I'll choose an IP for the new collie. Now, the IP block of my virtual network is 10.0.2.0 through 24, so I'll choose an IP from this block. Netmask is 255.255.255.0 for a 24 IP block. The gateway is 10.0.2.2. So I can use Google DNS as my DNS server and route. Now you can click the Save button. Okay, I'll reboot the machine to be sure that the changes are applied. Boot completed. So open the terminal screen and first type sudo su to switch the user to root so that you don't have to write sudo for every command that requires root privileges. And then run the ifconfig command to see the IP address of Kali. And it's 200. So let's ping a remote system, for example, Google DNS 8.8.8.8. Yes, we received the response packages. The network's okay now. So to double check, open a browser and visit any website. Metasploitable download and install. So let me describe a little bit to you. Metasploitable is a virtual machine image that is created by SoundForge. Now, this is a virtual machine where there are many vulnerabilities, so that's why it's fun to play around with. Metasploitable, to be clear, is a deliberately vulnerable Linux virtual machine. So this VM can be used to provide security training and test security tools, as well as practicing for common penetration testing techniques. What a coincidence. Now, to install Metasploitable, you'll first need to download the disk image file to the computer. So for this, we can open up the favorite web browser and type in Metasploitable into your search engine. And from all these results, just click on the link that is going to SourceForge and click Download on this screen. And just by clicking the Save button on the incoming screen, it'll start to download the image file to your computer. And of course, depending upon your internet connection speed, the download process could take some time. Metasploitable virtual machine installation. So now we're going to install Metasploitable virtual machine using the Metasploitable image file that we downloaded. So we will show this image file as a disk to VirtualBox virtualization software. So why don't we start? Open the Downloads folder and extract the Metasploitable Linux 2.0 file from your Downloads folder, wherever you put it. So now let's copy the Metasploitable 2 Linux folder and paste it into the Metasploitable 2 Linux folder on your C drive users username VirtualBox VMS folder. Paste it there. Open Oracle VirtualBox and click the New button on the main screen. So on this screen, we're going to install Metasploitable as our machine. So write the name that we will use for this virtual machine. In the machine folder section, let's select the Metasploitable 2 Linux folder that we copied and pasted. So in the type section, just click on Linux for Metasploitable. For version, select the type, Debian 64-bit. Click Next. So on this screen, we can determine the amount of RAM that we're going to give our virtual machine. And this value can be changed after installation, but right now, let's just set it to 1024. Click Next. And on the screen, we can specify the disk system of the virtual machine and show the location of the Metasploitable disk image that we downloaded. And click Add. So now find the Metasploitable 2 Linux folder. Click on the metasploitable.vmdk file. Click Choose. and click the Create button. And just like that, the virtual machine is created. Click Start. And the virtual computer will open automatically and comes up with username and password screen. So, username, MSF admin, and password, MSF admin. Great job. Very cool. So this is the last phase of creating Metasploitable 3. So you'll download the files and use Vagrant to build the machine from the ground up. So let's open the post about Metasploitable 3 again. Now, because you've already installed the VirtualBox, you can skip over this step. So click here to go to the Metasploitable 3 page on GitHub. And here's the page for it. You can find everything about Metasploitable 3 in here as well. So first, I'm going to download these files to start creating our virtual machine. Click this green button. Now, if you so happen to have a GitHub desktop, you can clone it. But I don't have one, so I'm going to download it as a zip file. It's not going to take long. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention I've downloaded it before, so I'm going to cancel out of it here, but you go ahead and finish yours. Then I'll go to my Tools folder. Now, you can right-click on the Metasploitable 3 archive and extract it anywhere you want to. I'm going to extract it to my desktop. Okay, great. So extraction is completed. Now, open the file that you extracted the files to, and you will see a PowerShell script named build.ps1 in that folder. Yeah, you can have a look at it if you want. And as you can see here, it looks like default installation directories. Now, if it doesn't find it, it will try to install the suitable version all by itself. So pretty much the script will build everything for us. Well, almost everything. Yeah, from the start, open the PowerShell command terminal. Now, change your directory to the main Metasploitable 3 directory that you have extracted the files to. Now, I'm going to list files to show you and type ./build.ps1 Windows 2008 to build Windows version of Metasploitable 3. Oh, let's forget to change my execution policy. And I'll right-click on the PowerShell icon on the taskbar to run PowerShell as an administrator. So I'm going to change directory immediately. And by the command set execution policy unrestricted, I will not get this error anymore. So type Y to this question. Alrighty then, the build has begun. Now, this is going to take a while, I assure you. So go and have a few cups of coffee and bake your friends a whole bunch of bread and rolls and anything else you can find. But in the meantime, Vagrant is going to make a lot of things for you. Now, you do have to wait and be patient and not interrupt the process. So I'm going to pause the recording here, and I'll come back when it's done. All right, so Vagrant did a whole lot of things. Now, you should do one more thing to stand the virtual machine as a VirtualBox file. So I'll open a new administrator PowerShell for myself and type Vagrant up win2k8. So this command is going to help Vagrant to install some other things and make the virtual machine ready to use. And it's going to take some time again, so wow, maybe it's time for another cup of coffee. So now you're going to see many lines on your PowerShell screen. However, on my screen, you won't see as many because, well, this is my second attempt to use it. Okay, so it's finished. So when you open your VirtualBox, you will see Metasploitable 3 there. So choose Metasploitable 3 and start it up. Okay, so I recorded this error so that you can see it's not such a big deal. Right now, you should just stop the Vagrant process to free the resource. Now you can open up the PowerShell window again and type Vagrant status. Right, so as you see, the Vagrant process is running on resources of Metasploitable 3. So type Vagrant halt Win2K8 to stop Vagrant. And now it's finished. So now you can open Metasploitable 3 from the VirtualBox. And finally, you get to the Windows login screen. Now, from the above menu, click the Input Keyboard, insert Control-Alt-Delete. Now click Vagrant User, and the password for Vagrant User is Vagrant. Wait a few seconds. All right, congratulations. You deserve a cup of coffee. You have successfully installed the Metasploitable 3. And now you can start the course. Free Windows operating systems install. So another virtual machine that we will be using in Nmap will be Windows 7. Now, because Windows operating system is probably the most widely used operating system in the world, finding vulnerabilities related to this operating system is very important for system security experts and pen testers and, okay, I'll say it, attackers. So just open up your favorite web browser and click the Windows link on the screen to download Windows Virtual Machine, ie8.win7.virtualbox. You see that? So select that as the virtual machine in the incoming screen. Select VirtualBox as the platform. And now just click Download Zip. And the download process will probably start automatically for you. And of course, it may take some time depending upon your internet speed. And after the download is finished, you'll be able to extract the file by finding it in your Downloads folder. Now, in the ie8.win7.virtualbox folder, double-click the ie8 OVA file, and this screen will show you the features of the virtual machine to be installed. Just click the Import button, and the image file will be installed in the computer. And this process may take some time depending upon the host computer. Okay, so after it imports that, the virtual machine that is installed will be on the left side. See it in the VirtualBox main screen, so click Start. Now, if an error message appears, that means we need to edit the properties of the Windows 7 virtual computer. The reason for the error message on the screen is that the resources of the image file won't be able to be met by the host machine. So that's easy. So in this case, we'll just make a few changes to the virtual computer. So again, we'll click on Settings. Click on the left-hand side, the System, and the RAM value. We'll set that on the right-hand side of the motherboard. And the CPU number is set in the processor. And display card RAM value set in display. And that is the network that we will select in Network section. Click USB 1.1 OHCI controller. Click OK. And click on the Start button. Vulnerable virtual machine. All right, so practicing your skills always helps you in your career and your personal life. But here we're just going to stick with your professional life, right? So, there are many ways for you to gain the knowledge of web application penetration testing. You can read blogs, and you watch courses, and you participate, you watch videos, and so on and so forth, but nothing will ever beat actual hands-on experience in order to improve your skills. Hands-on experience allows you to understand the procedures and methods of securing web apps. So you're going to get your hands dirty to get more out of this course. And it's a good thing, because you know what? Muscle memory. That's all I'm going to say. Now, to accomplish everything that we've been talking about, you must have a vulnerable web application so that we can try to build that lab, right? Of course, you can develop a web app by yourself, but it's not necessarily reasonable when you're new to web vulnerabilities. So you must first exploit and learn what the vulnerabilities of web applications might be and what they look like. So as web penetration testers, it's vital to be aware of real-world applications, which are very diverse in many, many ways. They're built with various technologies, and each of them can be served up differently. So, to be prepared for testing, we should practice and improve our skills. Stands to reason, right? Now, thanks to our security community, we can find many intentionally vulnerable web applications on which to practice. So that means that we can download these applications' source code and then use them in our environment. Also, there are some pre-built virtual machines that contain these applications already. And by using these virtual machines and applications, that way you ensure that you have a safe environment in which to work. B-Box. Now, I didn't say beatbox, although that would be fun. But I just want to let you know that you can develop your attacking skills, identify and exploit vulnerabilities in web applications with this. This is an OWASP project called Vulnerable App Directory Project. And it holds and categorizes pretty much almost everything for us. Most of the vulnerable applications can be found in this project. Now, here are many options when you need vulnerable applications in virtual machines. Now, thanks to the community for this purpose, many buggy apps are developed. So that means it's intentional. You can find and review a list of all known vulnerable web applications here. And if you're not necessarily comfortable using an already built configuration, of course, you can create your own vulnerable system from the very beginning. Some developers, that's what they do without even knowing it. I'm just kidding. All right, so I need to be honest with you. When I was first planning out this course, I was planning to create a vulnerable machine from the very beginning by myself and have you do it as well. As I've said, I really do believe that this has many benefits in order to learn application deployment process at the very least. But as I already told you, what I decided was it's too time-consuming, and it certainly isn't for beginners. So, for that reason and others, we're not going to do it that way. In this course, we're going to use a prepared virtual machine called B-Box. Okay, so B-Box contains the buggy application BWAP. Buggy Web Application, in case you're wondering. Therefore, we are going to play with the BWAP in this course. So it's based on PHP, and it runs on the MySQL database server at the back end. It has 3 levels of security, low, medium, and high, and each level demands different skills. So it covers all risks from the OWASP Top 10 project, with all major known web vulnerabilities, such as XSS, CSRF, SQL injection, file injection, upload flaws, and many more. So at any time, you can easily reset the database if you figure that you want to start over again. And it comes with a simple, straightforward interface. Alas, don't let that deceive you, because it's only for learning purposes. Now, another great feature, you can also view the vulnerability in the source code. So it means that you don't really need to try something blindly like a script kiddie. You can observe and measure what you're doing by looking at the source code. Okay, anyway, let's just install this box into the lab. So open up your favorite browser, and this time type BWAP, and follow the first link from the results of the search. And here we are at the official website of the owner of the application. And now we can go to the download page. Click the link below to download bbox, and you will be redirected to sourceforge.net. So click here to download and save the file. Download will take a few minutes. And this time I am absolutely sure that I'm not going to record the entire download process. Okay, so after the download finishes, go to your download folder. And what do you know? Here is the downloaded file in 7-zip format again. So let me just close the browser so that you can have a clean view. Okay, so right-click on the file, extract the files. I'm going to extract it to a new folder under the previous folder that I created for virtual machines at the beginning of the course. And I'll wait a few seconds until the extraction finishes. All right, so the extraction is done. Let's go to the folder. And here are the files. And double-click on the file with this VMX extension. And now the virtual machine will start in full screen automatically. And again, we're going to come up against this warning. And just click on I moved it. And continue. Okay, so now in a few seconds, the bbox will start. And here is the desktop environment of our virtual machine. And I'm going to offer congratulations yet again. You have imported a vulnerable machine into your lab environment. Good job. All right, so now we have imported the pre-installed BWAP virtual machine. It's also possible to download the application code itself and use it, but we're not going to do it that way. So one thing to keep in mind, these kinds of applications are, they're damn vulnerable. Don't upload them to an internet-facing server. They will be compromised. So believe me, I did it once for experimental purposes, and it did not take any time at all for it to be hacked. Now, in case you think I'm giving you permission to do that, again, just make sure that you set it up in a secure environment. VirtualBox network settings. So let's set up our virtual network. It is, of course, required to use VirtualBox because we really do want to avoid accidental damage to actual systems during this course. So, therefore, we will ensure that all virtual machines that we are going to be using will be on the same virtual network. So the network is the ability of multiple devices to communicate with each other. You know that, right? It's either going to be wired or wireless. And we can use this to connect a network device, typically. So we will configure the NAT network so that all virtual machines that we're going to be using are on the same network. Now, when we create a NAT network, Oracle VirtualBox will be the program that will automatically assign an IP to all the computers in this network. The IP, of course, is the address that is required for a computer to communicate with other computers over this network. And each computer has to have its own or different IP. In fact, each computer connected to the internet has a different IP address. The IP refers to the address for computers. The address of each computer has got to be different. The IP address is available in two different versions, IPv4 and IPv6. Now, widely used across the world is IPv4. It's 32 bits, and it consists of 4 8-bit numbers, each separated by dots. So here's an example, 192.168.1.1. Now, each number group can have a value between 0 and 255. So if there are two computers with the same IP, there will be IP conflicts in the network. So, in order to prevent this, DHCP, or Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, is used. And what DHCP does is assign a different IP to each computer. So therefore, you don't have an IP conflict, right? So NAT establishes the network. So we'll click File, click Preferences, and click on Network. And now click Add New Network on this screen, and click on the arrow, and then Exit. Now the virtual machines will need to get into this NAT network. So click Virtual Machine, and click Settings, and click on Network on the incoming screen. So on this screen, select NAT Network from Attached To, and click on the arrow. And then you can follow the same process for your other virtual computers. Connections test. Great, so now we're going to test whether the virtual machines installed will be able to see each other. So for this test, we'll be checking to see whether each virtual computer can communicate with the other virtual computers on the network. Now, for this purpose here, this test, it's enough to just check whether the virtual computers are on the same network and therefore then can ping each other. So we can check the network settings, or you can check them with a command line in order to check the IP value. So for me, I use a CLI because many programs used for penetration testing run through the command line. The command line command is an important advantage, and you know what? You'll get used to it because not all programs have GUI screens. So let's check the IP value from the command line. Now, of course, different operating systems have different ways, whether it's Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. For IP control on Linux and Mac OS, open up the terminal, write ifconfig on the command line, press Enter. And then on the incoming screen, you can see the computer IP. IP control for Windows computers. Open the command line, click Start, and write in cmd, click cmd.exe, open the command line, write ipconfig in the command line, and press Enter. And you can see here that we have the computer IP on this incoming screen. So now open VirtualBox. Click on the Kali Linux virtual machine on the left-hand side of the VirtualBox screen. And click Start from above. And then after opening Kali Linux, you can log in by entering the username and password. Now click Terminal on the desktop. Open Terminal and check IP information. Just type ifconfig. Great, so once Metasploitable opens, you can put in the username and password. And on the incoming screen, write and check the information by typing ifconfig. Click on the Ubuntu virtual machine on the left-hand side of the VirtualBox screen. And after Ubuntu opens, you can log in by entering the username and password. Now click Show Applications, search Run Terminal, press Enter. And when the terminal opens, you can check the IP information by typing ifconfig. Now click on the Win 7 virtual machine on the left-hand side of VirtualBox and click Start from above. And then after Windows 7 opens, you can enter the username and password and click the Start button. Write CMD in the search bar, enter, and a command line opens. So now you can type ipconfig on the command line, and there you can check the IP information. Okay, so now we need to test that the Kali Linux virtual system can communicate with the other virtual systems over the network. So open up Kali Linux for this. Click Terminal. Now we need to ping the IP address of the Metasploitable computer. So to do this, enter ping 10.0.2.4 and press Enter. And the display will show that the ping packets are gone. So in this case, communication is taking place. Ping the IP address of the Ubuntu computer and just enter ping 10.0.2.7 and press Enter. And the ping packets are gone. So in this case, again, communication is taking place. So now we'll ping the address of the Windows 7 computer. Enter ping 10.0.2.5, press Enter. Now look at the display. The ping packets did not leave here because the ping requests are blocked on the firewall of a Windows 7 computer. So that means that in this case, we need to employ reverse communication. So just enter Windows 7 and click the Start button. And in the search field, just enter command. Command line opens. Now here, just enter the IP address of the Kali Linux computer. So that means enter ping 10.0.2.5 and press Enter. Okay, so now we see that the ping packets are gone. So in this case, we know that our communication is working.